Okay, you made it. Thank you so much for swinging by.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Was it a tough drive for you today?
No, I actually drive all over Los Angeles as part of my work, so I'm used to it.
How do you deal with that on a daily basis?
It's a spiritual practice. It really is. No, I'm not joking. I just accept that there's traffic, and so I don't fight it. And I have a Prius, and I listen to audiobooks. And like one of the biggest tips is when you're driving with people to call them friend instead of like jerk or asshole. So if someone cuts you off, it's like, okay, friend, you need to go. So it keeps my nervous system regulated.
That is much more mentally healthy than what I do. So well played.
Thank you. I have to because I'm in the car all day sometimes. So
you've taken the higher ground.
Thank you.
So tell me, like, what's 2024 been like for you so far? I mean, how's the year kind of shaping up? Because a lot of people in this town are, excited for 2024. It's like our first full year of, kind of getting back to work.
Well, so, I do a couple different things. So one of my jobs is I'm a hospice nurse. So I have been working a lot for the last 4 years. I never really stopped that work. That was actually that was the busiest time the last few years. So 2024 actually feels a little like it's, a little bit more relaxed. I would say last year actually was the first year that it felt like we were really back to normal. Yeah.
A hospice nurse.
Yeah.
That's not an easy job.
No, it's a calling. Yeah. It's not, I became a nurse to be in labor and delivery. And then I somehow ended up at the opposite end.
And during the middle of it, and then you were like busy during a pandemic.
Yeah.
Like, how crazy is that?
Yeah. So I've been in hospice. I've been a nurse for 25 years and I've been in hospice for over 20. And the pandemic was really hard. I think there's a lot of medical workers out there with some PTSD that they need to work with. That also, what I also do besides being a hospice nurse is I'm a Wim Hof Method instructor. So I teach breathwork and ice baths and mental focus, and that really helped me. It saved my life basically through the pandemic.
Because everything was just so stressful.
It was so stressful, especially in the beginning because we didn't know what we were working with. So, all of my sisters are nurses. One is a ER nurse, and usually there's protocol in the medical field, and we didn't know what we were doing, and we didn't know if we were contagious and going to give it to our families. It was terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've just only read stories. Actually, you're probably the first nurse that I've actually spoken to that was an active nurse during the pandemic.
Oh, really?
That must have been terrifying. Yeah, that must have been exhausting, terrifying, mentally draining.
It was, to an example, when someone passes away at home, it's my job to go and to give the time of death, to pronounce them. And then it's my job to pronounce the mortuary for the body to be picked up. And our usual turnaround time in Los Angeles for mortuaries is 2 hours. It's usually less than that. And at the height of the pandemic, it was 24 to 48 hours because mortuaries were that busy.
That's crazy.
That's insane. I know when people kind of forget, and people that weren't in it don't realize how terrifying it really was for a time, right? That was a very acute time.
Yeah.
And then it eased up down the road.
I think eventually it got so political towards the end, people forgot like the toll that it took on the first responders and the nurses and the doctors in like the first 3 months when no one really knew what was actually going on.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think there's still a lot of nurses leaving the medical field, and I think it's just that they're burnt out and we don't feel supported, and exactly, people forget what we went through.
Yeah, it must have just been terrifying working in a hospital environment during that time.
Yeah, well, I was at home, so I do in-home hospice, but it still was. Yeah,
still just miserable.
Yeah, miserable.
I mean, how did you get through that, just on a daily basis for yourself?
Well, one, I gained 20 pounds really fast, whether I wanted to or not. I was just so stressed out. That's how I probably ate more ice cream than I should have.
Yeah.
But my other job as a Wim Hof instructor, I was already a Wim Hof Method instructor at that point. So I had the tools of breath work, an ice bath, and a meditation practice. And I would do breath work multiple times a day, because on top of the stress, we also physically were wearing full PPE all day, which is really uncomfortable and really hard to breathe. And so doing breath work throughout the day made all the difference in the world. It helped my lung capacity, it helped me physically, and then it also helped me emotionally be able to have this time to pause and take a moment to like reconnect with myself and my body. It was life-saving.
As someone who is working and deep in it, like you were, do you feel frustrated at all with like the conversations that people are having these days in like Washington D.C. about like whether masks are even useful or whether like
I am open to it all because we didn't know, and I honestly think we, as a whole of a society, especially in like California and Los Angeles, we did what we thought was best. I do, like when we were having a really high death rate, when it was that 24 to 48 hour turnaround in mortuary where we didn't have beds in the hospitals, the fact that some people were still gathering, that was insulting. That was devastating. It's like, we don't have hospital beds and you're gathering. But then as long as we needed masks and wore masks here, I don't know if that was beneficial either. Yeah. So
it's hard to tell because like I was abroad for much of it, so it really affected me because when we were if you're in the United States, you're still in the United States, right? And there, even though it was quiet, you can still get in your car and visit friends or get out and around, but traveling across international borders was completely impossible.
Yeah.
For months on end, and it was strange, like how I kept getting stuck in different places over the 2.5 years. Where it was,
really,
like for example, I was filming in Ethiopia in March 2020 when the world closed, and then I had difficulties getting out of Ethiopia.
So how long were you in Ethiopia for?
Okay, I guess China closed in like mid-February. And that's when everyone was like, ooh, this is getting serious. And then I had a job lined up in Saudi Arabia to do. I was going to ride a motorcycle around Saudi Arabia. It was fun. But then that got canceled. And then I was just like, well, I'm going to go to Africa because no matter what, the entire African continent's not going to close, right? And I just thought, like, there's so many beautiful countries in Africa and so many amazing places to film. I'm just going to go to Africa for like 6 months. So went to Ethiopia and, was offline for 2 or 3 days. So I think altogether I was in Ethiopia for like less than 7 days. And we were like 2 or 3 days into our filming, and I was probably 3 days offline. And then I got up to the top of a mountain, and our guide was like, let's sit here for a minute. We'll make some coffee, and you guys can check your phones because we have a signal here because we didn't before because we were down in the valley. And then the phone just blew up, and then I was just like, fuck it. Filming's done. Like the world just closed on us.
It closed, it closed on my birthday. It was March 14th, 2020. It was my birthday. I was supposed to go to Hamilton. They canceled it, and I was so annoyed.
Those bastards.
Right. It's like if I only knew what level of annoyance and discomfort I was going to have. But on that day, I was like, they're closing down Hamilton? Horrible.
So, I mean, where are you from originally? Like, where does all this come from? Like, let's go. Let's find.
Well, I'm third generation from Los Angeles.
Third generation?
Yeah, so my kids are fourth generation from Angelinos, that we say with pride, like maybe too much pride. Angelinos love being Angelinos.
But there's no like like everyone I've met here is from somewhere else.
Right. And so most people that move here and don't like Los Angeles, it's probably because they haven't met any natives. So once you meet natives and kind of understand, because she's so big, right? Los Angeles, she's hard to understand, and there's so many different areas. But when you meet people, like I grew up in the San Fernando Valley of Los Angeles, and it's basically a small town, like even within a big city.
Like I like LA because there's a lot of like little communities, right? If you live locally,
right,
it can be quite nice. Like I don't leave this neighborhood very often, so it's quite nice because I have lots of friends and you have all your shops and stuff.
Right. It's like trying to get to Santa Monica, so I live in Granada Hills, which is northern Los Angeles. I have 3 adult children, and my 2 sons live in Santa Monica, which is also a lovely part of Los Angeles. Granada Hills is beautiful. And then my boyfriend lives in Los Feliz, which is my favorite part of Los Angeles. But all those 3 places are an hour apart.
Yes.
Within the same city.
Yeah. It's crazy because I spent a lot of time living in Asia. I lived in China for many years, and then I also lived in Switzerland off and on for the last few years. And it's amazing like how public transportation has improved and done so much, and the United States has ignored all of it. Like every city, I mean, New York is unique because of its subway system, and it's because it's a small location. But the rest of the United States just hasn't like figured out how to make trains.
Portland is a little bit better, but Portland's also so small. Like
So small.
It's so easy.
Yeah.
And I know we're trying here. My family uses the metro a lot more than most people in LA just to get around and see each other, and because we've always done it, so we're used to using it. Because they don't also, it's the LA metro system is complicated. They don't make it easy. I had an easier time navigating the metro system in Paris than I did here.
Yeah.
And they're trying to expand it for the 2028 Olympics, but there's a lot of neighborhoods, like the neighborhood in Brentwood, that's sort of like where the 405 and 101 meet. We're trying to expand the metro, and that neighborhood is fighting it.
Oh, really? So other people are fighting it. It's like this whole, like, what's it called? NIMBY, right? Not in my backyard.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, everything that we do, it's like it's slower. There's been accidents. It's like we're supposed to be significantly farther along than we are. But they are trying a little bit, but it's still not enough.
I did read that they're building a high-speed train from LA to Las Vegas. Yeah, but it doesn't leave from like LA. It leaves from like Pasadena or someplace out further than Pasadena.
I think we voted on that years ago. Like we gave the money for that years and years ago. It's like, just give us bus or give us transportation here. No one really needs to go to Vegas anymore, right? Like, or maybe now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, why Vegas?
Vegas is still fun. Have you been to the Sphere?
No.
Okay.
But I've heard it's cool.
It is. I went there not for a musical concert because the prices are ridiculous, but I went to see the Darren Aronofsky, the esteemed director. He made this incredible show called Postcard from Earth, and it's kind of like a 45-minute feature film, but it's also kind of showing us how we have to take care of our environment. But it's actually just really 45 minutes of the most breathtaking scenes around the world. And of course, it's like fully immersive because the screen is all around you. That's pretty spectacular. Right. It was worth the trip to Vegas.
Yeah.
So what was it like growing up in Los Angeles? I mean, you must have seen this city change so much.
Oh, yeah. So I also grew up in the Valley, which is like the suburbs where like we had big backyards and pools and rode bikes. We had a very like stereotypical, this is the 80s and 90s where like, we smoked weed in the backyard and like we had our neighborhood friends. It was really fun. And then the nice part of that part of the Valley too is when like we were old enough to drive, we could drive into Hollywood to see shows. And this is in the 90s. So we went to the Troubadour, which is right around the corner, and sneak into the Whiskey. We would sneak into all these clubs, but then we would go home. So Hollywood in the 90s was a completely different place.
Well, you got to walk me through this.
So maybe not West Hollywood. West Hollywood has always been a little bit more fabulous, but Hollywood in the 90s was dangerous and dirty, and there was no reason to really hang out. Hollywood and Highland didn't become a thing until like 15 years ago.
Oh, really?
Right. It was just old dirty buildings. Like we would come to a show and then get in our car and leave as fast as we could and go back to the Valley.
That's crazy. So, but there were still all the entertainment venues here. So people were coming here because the venues were here, but then they would get out and leave right away. There were no restaurants and it was dangerous?
Yeah, it was way more dangerous. And it had a different energy to it. It was a little sad. It was a darker energy. And then in the last 10 years, especially like right before COVID, it really felt like it was coming alive. And we put so much more money into making it an actual like tourist destination with Hollywood and Highland. And then with COVID, there was a couple years that it seemed dead again. But now I wouldn't say last year is where it really felt like it was coming back alive again.
Yeah.
And now it's different because, there's, even though I'm in the medical field and my family's in the wellness field and my family all is too, we're not in the industry. I'm sure as you picked up as it's called.
Yes.
Just the industry. We don't even say like studio industry. That energy has shifted post-strike. Like everything is slow. People are unsure of like the stability of their jobs. People that like one of my best friends is a Emmy award-winning makeup artist, and she is like, work is so slow. I don't know what the future looks like.
Yeah, I mean, nothing's coming back. Like that's one of the things. Like I've talked to a lot of producers and directors here, on this platform, on this chat, and people are just like it's not coming back. Like, and the reason is because I think COVID, like trying to film during COVID was one thing, And then the strike happened, and now everyone's just trying to figure out like where to go, and no one really knows.
Right.
And now you've got also Paramount, you know, and maybe Skydance. Like they're trying, like there's going to be a lot of consolidation because no one can keep up anymore with like Disney and Netflix and all these others. So everyone's just like wondering when everyone's just going to start getting back to work, and it's not happening.
Right. And my boyfriend is also a filmmaker, and an actor, and he just shot a vertical series that I guess, so, you know, usually they shoot horizontally, but they turned the camera and shot vertically, and it's specifically like series for phones that are really popular in China right now, which is kind of the new shift. But then the rules for these vertical series are cloudy because they're like social media technically. So like they didn't even pull permits for locations. Like the rules that other filming has to go by, they're not going by these. From what this is like third parties.
Yeah. No, it makes sense though, because like, you know, you really only need film permits if you're going to put down tripods and lights, right?
But I think they did.
Oh, but even with shooting on like phones or shooting vertically?
They were shooting on phones. It was regular cameras that they were turned.
Oh, like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh.
For, you know, again, this is third party. I could have totally just misinterpreted.
We'll get him on the podcast later. He can explain it. Yeah. And our next guest, no. But that's interesting. So, like, how did growing up in LA make you want to get into the healthcare profession? I think that's you know, was it part of it? Were your parents in the healthcare profession?
My dad was a chiropractor, and he just I have 3 sisters, and he just decided that we were going to be nurses, and so I don't know why.
Let it be.
And so, and my 2 of my sisters are much older, and so 10 and 12 years older. And so I saw that being a nurse was a great way to make enough money and have time off to travel and do other things. And so that's how I got into nursing. And then I got into end of life because I was terrified of death. And I figured the best way to get over something you're terrified of is to really face it head on. And then also there was a job position that fit my schedule. I had 3 little kids at the time, and I was in school. I was an LVN, which is a licensed vocational nurse. And so I was in school to become an RN. I had these 3 little kids. I needed a job that was flexible. And so I found it in hospice, and then I fell in love with hospice and helping people die with dignity and pain-free and to support their family is really beautiful, meaningful work, and everything else seemed sort of meaningless every time I tried to do another job. And then right around the time my kids were getting ready to graduate and move out, and my 20-year marriage dissolved, and I was kind of like, who am I? What am I? Like, I've lost all these labels. I had practiced yoga, and I was a CrossFitter, and I was like, trying to see, was it religion, meditation? What was it that I was looking for when I found the Wim Hof Method, which is breathwork and ice baths and mental focus. And it was like life. It was this eye-opening experience where I realized I've spent all these years helping people die in dignity and pain-free and with beauty and with love. But, you know, like the end of life is not the time to figure that out. You should live that way. And I found that through this practice of breathwork and ice baths. And then so I really wanted to help people live with dignity and pain-free and surrounded in love. And so that's how I never will fully leave hospice. I'll always be a part of that. And also in California, it's the medical aid in dying is legal here, which a lot of people don't know.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the right to die. And so I'm an advocate for that. So I will always be part of that. And then I want to help people live better too. So you can do both sides.
My aunt, my father's sister, does that in Canada, because Canada, you also have or in Ontario, where I'm from, Toronto, you also have the right to die, but you have to kind of be able to prove that you have an incurable kind of disease.
So this isn't assisted suicide. So we call it medical aid in dying or right to die. MAID is medical aid in dying. And so you have to be cleared by 2 doctors that you have a terminal illness, so 6 months or less life expectancy. You have to be of sound mind, which then negates a lot of degenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia. And you have to be able to administer it yourself. So either by drinking the solution, or if you have a G tube, or we can actually administer it rectally too. But you have to be the person that administers it.
Yeah. I lived in Switzerland for a while, and they have a lot of like clinics that help people
do they?
take their own lives as well. Yeah, Switzerland is probably, from what I've heard, is probably one of the most progressive countries in the world around this because, they just decided it was going to be one of the industries that they became good at.
Yeah. I hope one of the things that I'm in the future going to be more of an advocate for is, so like as of right now, if someone has dementia or Alzheimer's, you can't put that in your advance directive that you would like to take it. So if you wanted to take the medication, you would have to take it when you were still of like completely sound mind. And that could take away years from people. So I would like to see in California that you could put in your advance directive, when I get to this level of my progression of my disease process, I would like for this medication to be administered.
Yeah, that'd be nice actually, because I think the one thing you don't want to do is like become a burden on other people's lives, right? Like the moment you can't take care of yourself, I think that becomes. We're young and we're talking about.
Oh no, I think about this constantly, and so coming from Canada, you have so many more resources. We don't have the resources or infrastructure here at all. That is going to be one of the next catastrophic events in our country in the next few years. Is the
baby boomers.
The level of elderly people that are going to need assistance, that their families don't have funds for it, because hospice doesn't cover around caregiving. That's not part of the benefit. And these assisted livings can be $10,000 to $15,000 a month.
A month.
Yeah. And I know
who can afford that?
It's surprising, right? Yeah. But we already have a bed shortage. We already don't have resources, but the projected what the next 10 years is going to look like is going to be really challenging.
In Canada, we have a lot of resources, but there's still a bit of a misnomer. Like, there's not a lot of care for elderly people. Mm-hmm. Like most of the time, and this sounds terrible, but most of the time, old people own their own homes, and because they bought their homes and they lived in them for 50 fucking years or whatever,
right.
So they own them. And then when they get sick, the families just sell the homes, and then all that money goes into their old age care.
Right.
And by the time they pass on, there's nothing left. Like it's just been all sucked away by the healthcare industry. And that's even in Canada, where we have like socialized care, but actually a lot of that elderly care, or if you're in an old age home or something, that's not covered. You have to now. It might be subsidized a little bit, mm-hmm. or the healthcare element.
I think you guys do have hospice centers. So if someone is terminal, from my understanding of a friend that lives in I think Ottawa, but like when someone is on hospice, there's an actual like hospice center that's covered, which is different than long-term care for the elderly.
Right.
And these big assisted livings that we have that are charging so much, that look like these beautiful hotels that pay their caregivers terrible, are owned by venture capitalists. Mm-hmm. They're not these mom and pop places where they really care about your elderly. Yeah. No, this is like big business.
Yeah, not non-for-profits.
Right.
Looking to reinvest all their profits back into making the customer experience better.
And they're looking to cut corners. I was a director of nursing for one of those for a year, and then like ran out as fast as I could, because like they just keep trying to cut corners as much as they can and then increase. And then once you put your loved one there, it's so hard to move them out.
Yeah, because moving must be just so traumatic for them.
Especially someone that's confused, and you get the deposit, and then where are you going to... Wow, this conversation got really depressing really fast.
Well, I have elderly parents, right? Like I'm thinking, I have two parents in their 70s, and they're slightly, they're eventually going to become less mobile, and I'm actually having these conversations with my brother.
Yeah. So here's what you need to do. First of all, is your parents need to have a legal advance directive.
Right.
So what they want done medically, and have it very clear, talk about it often, have it written in paper, and then also have your financial advance directives. They need to be clear who their DPOA is, durable power of attorney, if it's you or your brother or both. So that way, when like sometimes parents will pick one child as their DPOA, and then the other child gets to the hospital and tries to make decisions, and they're like, "We're sorry, we can't give you any information."
Right. That's
so. And you ask your parents right now for a list of all their medications that they're on.
Oh, good idea, yeah.
And a list of all of their doctors' names and phone numbers and their insurance information. And every time something changes, like just have it as a Google Doc. So if something happens, there's some medications that we just can't wean off. And if like something happens to them, and then the doctor's going to be like, okay, well, what are they on? And you're going to have no idea.
That's crazy. Yeah, that makes good sense. I wonder if I can get my dad to set up a Google Doc.
Yeah, or you set up, or go to their doctor's appointments with them, and ask for it.
Yeah.
And the doctor's office will be more than happy to help you figure that out because it makes their job easier too.
Yeah, makes good sense. Makes good sense. Okay, let's come back to you. So,
Okay.
like, I'm very fascinated with the nursing industry because I think because doctors, when you go into the doctoring field, and I've had a lot of doctors actually on the show too, like you end up really becoming a specialist in like one thing, right? Like I'm a chiropractor or, I deal with this. But nursing allows you to be like, not necessarily a specialist, but you get to touch so many different parts of medicine. Was that part of the kind of intrigue of getting into that?
No, and nurses do have their specialty. So I am a hospice nurse. I don't do anything outside of hospice. My one sister is an ER nurse. She doesn't know anything outside of the
Oh,
ER.
really? It's that specializer?
So our education is very broad, but then usually when we get a job, we usually kind of stay in that specialty. There is what's called a med-surg nurse. So med-surg is when you say like, oh, he's in the hospital, like the general sort of hospital. That's what we call med-surg. And so that is a very broad scope. That covers everything, but the majority of nurses do have some sort of specialty that they do. Labor and delivery, neonatal intensive care, regular ICU, dialysis. My one sister is a gastroenterology nurse practitioner. So we do. I think why people get into nursing versus being a doctor is nursing is our number one job is to be a patient advocate, and it's more hands-on and it's more taking care of the patient, where being a doctor is more solving a problem. So,
right. Okay, that makes sense.
So a doctor is, they take all the pieces of the puzzle and put it together and try to make someone better, where a nurse, our main priority is to actually take care of the person, not cure the disease. Okay. Or my job is never to cure the disease. My job is to make them comfortable.
Right. So as you get your nursing degree, you realize that you're afraid of death, and you figure like the best way to overcome this fear of death is to help people pass on comfortably and with respect and everything like that. So you decide to be a hospice nurse.
Yeah.
That's brave.
Yeah. I was young and desperate because I had 3 kids by 23. Oh. And I was just in the survival mode anyways at this point with these like little kids, and this job fit. And I was like, okay, let's just do it.
But there must have been like, I mean, you could have many jobs doing many things, but this is a very specific job of really like spending time with people who are
I think as soon as I got into it, I realized how special it was. And one of the perks of my job is I get to go into people's homes and see how they live, and there's no pretense because they're in these a really traumatic time, so they're not pretending to be something they're not. They're at their basic self, and I get to see family dynamics, and I get to see how cultures respond, and I get to see, especially in Los Angeles, like I have one patient that lives in East LA behind a piñata factory, where I park on train tracks. I have to call, let them know I'm there. They lock up the pit bulls, and I climb under piñatas to get to my patient in the back.
Holy.
And then I've had patients that literally have stadiums named after them and Picasso's in their bathroom, and then I have everyone in between. And so I get to see what real humanity is like, and not just see it, experience it and be a part of it. And it's one of my things I say all the time is working in death makes you appreciate life. Yeah,
I believe that. Yeah.
So I usually don't get stressed out about little things. I'm reminded every day of like how short this is, because my youngest patient was 18. My oldest patient was 109.
Jesus.
I have everyone in between. And like I have this not just understanding, like a true knowing of how quickly this can all change. And so my life, I prioritize my life for things that are really important.
Yeah, that must really help. It's a unique perspective you have for sure, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a downside, like talking about this fear of being a burden. That's something I carry with me, that like, oh, am I planning enough? Do I have enough saved? What's going to happen to me? So where I do have this like zest and vitality and pure enjoyment for life, I still have this fear of like, am I going to get dementia? Is this going to happen?
I think my biggest fear is like, I don't want to be a financial burden on anyone. Like if I can't pay my own medical bills or my own care bills as I get older, I think that's the thing that would make me really angry.
Yeah.
Even more so than dying.
It's right. Absolutely. And most people that are at that stage of life, a lot of people say there's a saying that like no one says they wish they worked more on their deathbed. And that's not necessarily true. People on their deathbed are most proud of following their passion. And people are really proud at leaving their families taken care of.
Yeah, I think that would be very kind of rewarding.
Right. Knowing that when they pass that the financially people that's on their mind at the end of life. But I had this one Southern older lady who loved like aesthetics. She loved clothes. She loved makeup and jewelry. And she had this family that adored her. But on her deathbed, she wanted to talk about all of her beautiful clothes and her jewelry. That she loved that. That was her passion. And if someone loves their job and dedicated years to working, even if it overrode their family, they're still really proud of that. It's not just this and also people at the end of life don't necessarily become these wise sages.
No, that's definitely true.
Right.
Yeah.
Like if you were a racist prick your whole life, you're probably going to be a racist prick on your deathbed, right? It's like not all of a sudden you're like, oh, you know what? I was wrong. No, you're probably a jerk on your deathbed too.
One of my favorite movies is Beginners, and it's with Ewan McGregor and oh my God, I'm blanking. He's a very old, wonderful actor, and he actually won the Oscar for this role. He's in his 80s. He was in his 80s when they filmed it. Anyways, it's about this father-son dynamic. So the father is quite elderly, and his wife dies. His wife of like 50 years passes on, and the father realizes that he's gay, or he was in the closet for
yeah.
And his son has to deal with that, and his son is Ewan McGregor, and then Ewan McGregor has to deal with his father, dating men in his 70s or whatever at an elderly state, and then they have this dynamic of how have you been hiding this and blah blah blah, and then eventually the father passes away with hospice care at home, and Ewan's visiting his father every day. Yeah, and he won the father, whose name I can't remember, won an Oscar for it. But it's a beautiful movie about just end of life realities.
And one of the problems we have with our in our Western culture is nudity. Like in other cultures, like in Scandinavian cultures, it's very common to be naked. German culture, like to see each other naked. In our culture, a lot of times the first time people are seeing their elderly parent naked is when they have to like change their adult brief, right? When they're bedbound, and there's this weird sort of conflict. And also, we don't talk about what the end of life looks like. End of life, you just don't close your eyes and go to sleep. It's a process, just like childbirth is a process that can take days. And these different physiological changes happen in the body. And like, even though you will never give birth in your life, you have a general concept of what happens during childbirth.
I try to shut it out every day. Like I wake up in the morning, I'm like, it doesn't actually happen.
It's beautiful. But death is a process that people have no idea. And so when they see their loved one, the end of life respirations that happen is called chain stoking, and it's normal. But it can look scary. And so on top of going through the pain of losing your loved one, whether you're close to them or not, losing a loved one is always difficult. Financial burden, having to pause your own life, right? Like your own job and taking care of your own kids. Now all of a sudden you're seeing your parent naked for the first time and having to do personal care and clean them. And then when they do start to go through the death and dying process, it looks scary. It's something that you're not prepared for. And so I'm in the works right now of trying to make a documentary about end of life, just to show people what it really looks like, so that we can at least take away one of these scary things that is happening at that time.
Yeah, the U.S. is a strange place. Like it seems to have all these like stigmas against death, for example, or nudity and all these other things. But actually, anyways, I've been living abroad for like 25 years.
Yeah.
So like I lived in China for 18 years. I've lived in the Dubai for a long time, and Switzerland for a bit. And like you realize like how people in maybe not China, but take Switzerland, for example. Like, people pretty much say what they feel, right?
Right, yeah.
Whereas here in the United States, everyone is hiding a little bit of like, what they truly are. Like, if they might come at you as being like super religious, but then they might have all these other kind of hobbies and activities that completely contradict that religion.
Yeah.
And again, this could be again about like,
or even like my ex-boyfriend is Swiss, and sometimes like his bluntness would take me off guard.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's actually kindness.
It was, yeah, for sure.
It's actually being really kind because he's being really direct. So we had our communication was great.
It saves so much time.
Right.
It's like we don't have to have this conversation for 20 minutes. This is 30 seconds.
Right.
It might hurt your feelings.
There was some culture shock, like LA girl, like Swiss engineer. Like there were times that we didn't match up.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Right.
So after, I can't believe you've been a hospice nurse for 20 years. I mean, we could do hours just on that. But when did you decide to focus in on Wim Hof? Like, because this guy is crazy. I mean, he's crazy and interesting, and he's doing some cool things. But he's a mixed bag.
He is even crazier in person. If you see him on film, we call him a Wim Wrangler. There's someone next to him to make sure that he stays on.
It's like the Biden, right? Someone take care of him when he fumbles all his words.
Really? I don't know about that. I found him at this time when my kids were getting ready to leave. My marriage was over, and I was like, I need something because I feel so lost. And I found it through a yoga teacher training program here in LA in Sherman Oaks, Rising Lotus, which is amazing if you need a yoga studio in LA. And part of yoga is breathwork. One of the legs of yoga is pranayama, which is breathwork. And so I'm lucky that my yoga mentor had practiced the Wim Hof style of breathwork, which is based in Tumo style breathwork, which is what Himalayan monks use to keep them warm themselves up. And I just really connected with it. The breath work was the first time I felt really fully present in my body. And this was at a time when I was feeling so lost. And so after the breath work, I went home and did a deep dive because I have two sides of my brain. I have this like hippie side of my brain that puts crystals out on the full moon and, does my like meditation practice and ecstatic dance. And then I have the nurse side of my brain that only believes in evidence-based practices and peer-reviewed blind studies. And so those two sides don't always meet up.
You must have some interesting conversations with yourself in the evening, right? Yeah.
In my own head. Like, do I believe? I'm reading my horoscope. I'm like, oh, wow, today's a great day. I'm like, do you really believe that? Yeah. Really? So I went home, and this was 7 years ago. I went home and did a deep dive of what studies were out there about the Wim Hof Method and about him and these amazing things that he did. And so I was sold. I was like, there's like scientific data to back this up, that this isn't just hippie woo-woo shit. There's actually real physiological benefits that we can have from this. And then I also realized my next step was having to do an ice bath, which sounded awful and terrifying.
They're the best.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, now I love them. But at the time, most women don't like the cold. Most women fear the cold because estrogen, depending where we are in our cycle, estrogen actually makes your skin more sensitive to temperatures. And so for a lot of women, cold actually hurts more. And so a lot of women fear taking ice baths. But I went to a workshop, did an ice bath, felt amazing, loved it. And so then I signed up and went to Spain with Wim. And this is before it was really popular. So I got to have a lot of one-on-one training with him in Spain. Then I loved it so much, I decided to become an instructor. And then I've traveled with Wim multiple times. He does this expedition in Poland where we hike Mount Śnieżka, nothing but shorts and a sports bra and in the snow. And then I've helped Wim with some of he's just started doing these big major events again. He used to do them here in the States. He has one coming up in Paris. And he is he's a change maker.
He's a guru.
Yeah, like in most change makers are a little weird, right? They're a little off, but he can be wild and crazy, but he can do all these amazing physical feats because he believes in himself in the practice. And when you're with him, you can feel that. He has this love, like his presence is palpable when you're around him. And his motto is everyone deserves to be happy, healthy, and strong, or happy, strong, and healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. And the thing about that, though, is that no one can do that for you. That's something you have to take ownership over yourself. If you want to be happy, strong, and healthy, like, then you have to put work into that.
Right. It's not a pill you take in the morning with breakfast.
Right. Exactly. No, it's not something your mommy and daddy are going to give you. It's, which, you know, as having adult children, that's really hard for me to not want to do everything for them and to be like, oh, sorry, now it's your turn. If you want to be happy, strong, and healthy, you have to do it. Which they are. They're doing great. So
that's good. That's good. I mean, that's terrifying, right? To, like, you know, have grown adult children and having to get them to find their own path.
Right. I think the launch years are terrifying.
What are the launch years?
The, like, getting ready to graduate high school and go away to college, where you really lose control over their day-to-day life when they, like, move away. And I think a lot of parents, especially mothers, have the hardest time with their oldest child or their only child, that, like, that kid is a direct reflection of my parenting, so I must control them. And then they have the audacity to leave and make their own decisions. All right. But it's wonderful.
That's good. Interesting.
Yeah.
So you decide to be a nurse,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're afraid of death. You decide to go into hospice care, which is incredible again.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go through a turbulent time in
Mm-hmm.
your personal life.
Yeah.
And then to find kind of who you are, you kind of want to live healthier. You want to live happy, healthy, and stronger. So you kind of figure out that Wim Hof and his teachings seem to be the way for you to get there and for you to share that with other people. That's a hell of a kind of, you know, big 360 you went through. Like, that's no small joke. Like, dealing with people who are dying and then be like, no, I want everyone to live healthier and happier and stronger. Like, trying to get people to live better while they're actually still alive.
Right. Well, because as people are dying and they're getting close to it, they do something called life review, where they, like, think, like, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? Where, like, and they're in this constant. So when I show up to see them, they want to have these conversations about, like, this life review. And so that's where the Wim Hof thing, making yourself, putting yourself in intentionally stressful situations. The whole point of the ice bath is to train your nervous system. The whole point, there's other benefits, right, with inflammation and white blood cells and norepinephrine. There's, like, all these other things that we now have studies to show. Even there's been a couple animal studies that show that cold exposure shrinks cancer cells. Mm-hmm. So we may have some human studies down the road. But ultimately, what it is that you are putting yourself in an intentionally stressful situation. You're intentionally activating your sympathetic nervous system, and then you're practicing getting back into your parasympathetic nervous system. We call it, like, embracing the suck, learning how to find comfort within discomfort. And if you can do that, because the one thing that this human existence, or the two things that this human existence can promise you, is that you're going to have emotional and physical pain again. The only thing you have control over is how you respond to it. Mm-hmm. And so if you practice responding, which, you know, I still don't 100% fully have, you know, I just snapped at a friend last week and was like, oh, guess I still have a lot of growth to do.
Some friends deserve it.
She did need to hear what I had to say, but just not the way that I said it.
Yeah.
But teaching to control your nervous system makes your life so much more fun.
It does, actually. Like, embracing the pain, I think, it makes life a lot easier. Like, because you skate through everything else that people are freaking out about.
Right. Like, things aren't a big deal. And then you can see the playfulness in life. Instead of being constantly scared, you're like, let's go. This is fun. Like, what's next? Bring it on.
I've been doing ice baths, actually, since I played basketball in college. Okay. So we had a big tub in the physical training room, or the physical therapy room.
Yeah.
And we would go down afterwards, you know, after games and after practices, and jump in, do the ice bath, and then have a hot shower and go home, right? Like, that was standard, right, for 4 years at college. And then it's something that I've always tried to stick with. But I also make TV shows where I, like, climb mountains and stuff. And anytime there's, like, a glacial river or something like that, we try to camp, you know, fairly close to it, but safely. And we're always going down and swimming in the glacier, and it's so life-changing.
I was just in Iceland, and we were hiking in a glacier, and there was, like, a waterfall in the glacier.
Oh, yeah.
And we were with the group, and my friends looked at me. They're like, "Oh, you're going in this, aren't you?" I was like, "Abso-fucking-lutely." So like just stripped down naked, jumped in the waterfall, got in there for a few minutes. But like, how much fun is that?
Yeah. And how healthy, I mean, how great it is for your body too.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so many benefits for it.
For me in the early days, it was the swelling because you would train so hard and then your muscles would kind of expand and then and all that lactic acid would build up. And then when you cool your body down, the swelling would go down and then the lactic acid would kind of be swept away. Like how'd they explain it? Like when your body's warm, all the blood goes out to the extremities. And then when you get into an ice bath, all the blood kind of goes back to the heart.
It goes to your core.
Yeah.
It dilates.
It dilates. And then, but in the same process, it cleans all the shit that your muscles have just burned. And
it also helps with something that specific function of dilating in the core and constricting in the extremities. And then when you warm up, the opposite happens. Like when you get out of the cold, then it shunts to your core and dilates to your extremities. So that opening and closing of your vascular system is called vascular plasticity. So your vascular system needs to stay flexible. And so one of the main causes of diseases in aging is atherosclerosis, which is the hardening of your vascular system.
Oh, interesting.
So by doing these like cold and hot training, same thing with like a sauna, and exercise too is helping with that vascular plasticity.
Interesting. Yeah. You explained that much better than I tried to.
Well, there's another thing. I also have ADHD and have never found a med that works for me. And the ice baths actually help release something called norepinephrine, which is a neurotransmitter in the brain, but it's a hormone in the body. And this norepinephrine, I believe, an ice bath, and like I could be off here, I believe it increase like a 2-minute ice bath can increase your norepinephrine by like 500-fold. But that's the neurotransmitter that's in charge of mental focus and mood stability. We give medications for depression called norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors. And so if I have to like do my taxes or clean out a closet or have to do a lot of paperwork for Medicare, which is the worst part of my job,
Oh, geez.
I'll go and take an ice bath. And that's like, that crisp feeling you feel when you get out of the ice that like, whew, every brain fog is gone. That's the norepinephrine in your brain.
It's beautiful. Like I stayed at a house once. I live at Airbnbs, so I was traveling around the world for a while, staying at Airbnbs, and I stayed at one that had a pool, and it was pretty cold on a daily basis in this country that I was in where the pool was, and I started loving it. I would wake up every morning, roll out of bed, jump in the pool, absolutely freezing cold. Yeah, like there wasn't ice in there, but it was And then I would go have a hot shower and start my day. And I tell you, the first like 6 hours of my day, I didn't need any food. I didn't need any coffee. I was just, I was on.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So one thing, end on cold.
End on cold.
Right. Oh. So if you take a hot shower after the cold, then you're inhibiting so many of the benefits of the cold. Your body naturally warming up it's a hormetic stressor, hormesis, which is, when there's an acute stressor in a small dose, your body then releases like a cascade of events to treat that stressor, and you get benefits from it. I may have not said that so clearly, but your body working to heat itself up is where you're getting a lot of the benefits from the cold.
So do the cold plunge, but don't heat yourself up. So
take a cold shower or lukewarm shower.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of people would have like a sauna and then have a cold plunge.
Yeah. And
finish on the cold plunge.
So I have a sauna cold plunge. I go back and forth. And so you end on cold.
End on cold. Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of people on this planet who advocate many of the things that maybe Wim Hof does. Like there's a lot of people out there who are breathing experts. There's a lot of people out there who are cold therapy experts. What kind of gravitated you towards him specifically?
Yeah. Well, he didn't invent any of this either, right?
No, he just packaged it. And he's a crarazy personality.
Right. And he put this breath work and cold together, but that's been a practice for, in multiple cultures through the millennia that didn't have contact with each other. They still did breath work practices or cold and heat practices.
Just on a tangent, do you mind if I interrupt you for 2 seconds?
I don't mind at all.
Okay. I was in Tibet once. We were, and this is like back in 2001 or 2002, and I remember I was in a monastery, and there were all these Tibetans chanting, and these monks were chanting, and I remember just the heat coming off of them. Like because they were using the chanting, the breath work to keep themselves warm.
Probably the Tumo breath.
Yeah, because it was freezing in there, and we're up at like 20,000 feet above sea level in this monastery on the side of a mountain.
That's so cool that you got to see that in person. I've only like heard about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was interesting because I lived in China for 18 years, so I was taking trips to Western China and parts of Tibet all the time, so I know it really, really well. I filmed there quite a bit too, and but you know, you do get to see this chanting and this breathing work that goes way beyond anything that's like religious. Like it was literally like how they start their day, how they warm their body up, how they warm up the monastery. Yeah, you know, because you get 100 monks in there, they're all chanting, and then all of a sudden you know, you go in there freezing cold with a hat and gloves on, then you're sitting there, you take off your jacket, and it's all because of this heat that these monks are generating. It's incredible.
I think there's like a video out there somewhere of like one of the practices that the monks take their cloth, dip it in ice water, sit in the snow, wrap themselves with this icy cold cloth, and don't get up until they've dried the cloth with their heat.
Oh, I haven't seen that. That sounds cool.
I've seen, it's like a little black and white video somewhere. But that's like one of the stories of, you know, where this came from. So like we do call the company of the Wim Hof Method is called Inner Fire. That sort of like inner fire breath work.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I love other styles of breath work too. I was drawn to him because that's who I was first introduced to, and also his passion for it, and how easy he made it. You know, sometimes in other practices like yoga or Buddhism, they can be a little strict and like, this is how it's done. And Wim is like, hey man, I don't know, just do it. Like if you ask him like, should I breathe in through my nose or in through my mouth? He'll be like, I don't care. Any hole will do. Just get it in a hole. Breathe. Just get it in a hole. And so where there are guidelines, you know, the one specific guideline for safety is that the breath work practice that we do not do that in water. We do those completely separately. So we have our breath work practice, and then we have the cold water practice. We don't do the breath work in water. People have died from doing that. But besides that, it's simple. Like I do public workshops once a month here in Los Angeles, and I do private workshops, and I do corporate events, and I sometimes do retreats. And so that you would pay money to come, but it's really beautiful to have a guided breathwork session in person and to have someone guide you. But you don't really have to pay to do any of this. You can go on YouTube.
Oh, he's all over YouTube.
Right. You can I do his guided breathwork on YouTube. You could do that. You can read up on how to take a cold shower, and it's completely free. So here's a way, because we haven't even talked about how like the study that he did that changed biology books. Like he did a study in Radboud University called an endotoxin study, where they injected him with a dormant form of E. coli. And through his breath work, he was able to change his blood pH, which then released these proteins that the E. coli never registered in his blood. And so
he killed the virus using his breath work?
His bacteria. And so before this, we used to think that we had no control over our immune system. We used to think it was just it was an autonomic system, like just how your heart beats. You don't really have control over that. And then after this study, they actually had to change biology books because of him.
That's interesting.
Right. And so here's this powerful tool that we can have that helps with mood stabilization. It helps with inflammation. It helps with metabolism and sleep and so many things that you could do for free.
It's interesting because, because I've had a lot of people in here talking about like holistic medicine as well, and kind of working outside the pharmaceutical industry to deal with some of the issues that you might be having, right? And again, I feel like this breath work and this cold therapy can deal with so much of what people are going through instead of just like sitting on a couch, taking a pill, right, and complaining about the world.
It helps with pain management. So I'm a nurse, and I believe in better living through pharmacology, like through chemistry. There is a place for medication at time, and Western medicine has done a lot to help a lot of people. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Have we made tons of mistakes? Is it corrupt? Absolutely. But also, Western medicine is the only thing that's really been proven to cure cancer.
Yeah.
It's the only, for depression, we're not doing a great job, but there are people that are so severely depressed that they have like a somatic response where they can't even move. Breath work is probably, just breath work alone may not only help with that, but breath work, ice baths, meditation, these diet, exercise, sunlight, all of these things are tools in the toolbox. Like one thing is not going to change your life, but cumulatively, they make a big difference.
It's interesting, like we were talking about immune systems, and how unaware we are as a society. Like just take the United States, for example, like how unaware Americans are of some basic things they can do to just juice up their immune system. And again, the breathe work, the cold therapy, but just regular exercise, like healthy eating, vitamin D.
Getting outside, putting your feet in the grass. Like there are some people that their bare feet probably haven't touched grass or dirt in years. And they wear rubber shoes that stop that vibration from the earth. So and again, not hippie woo shit. This is real science that it helps with.
It's called grounding.
It is called grounding. It helps with the oh gosh, I can't think, like negative ions. The negative ions in our body shed by grounding.
Yeah. It's the best standing in grass and just curling your toes.
Yeah. Also really like yoni sunning. I'm not going to lie.
What's yoni sunning?
So you know what a yoni is, right?
No.
Okay. So that's the female reproductive system. So in English, we don't have a word for the full female unit. So vagina is the canal, labia, majora, minora, vulva is the outside, but yoni is like the whole thing. And so ancient practices, women popped their yonis in the sun, and it helped prevent against yeast infections and bacterial infections and UTIs, and it feels really good. And it's my family, I think that's where they've like drawn the line. They're like, okay, now you're too crazy.
Yoni sunning.
And so for men too, are perineal sunning. So you just lay in the sun and let your goods soak it up.
And not
maybe
to get,
hard to do in West Hollywood.
And not to get sunburned.
Right, exactly. You could do it here in West Hollywood. You just probably will have a lot of fans.
There's enough people flaunting their stuff on Santa Monica.
Exactly. You could go to the rooftop and have a party.
It's pretty crazy around here, actually, on the weekends. But anyways, yeah, that's interesting. So I mean, where are you happiest? Like, are you happiest helping people live their current life better? Or are you happiest helping people end their lives in the most respectful and cared for way possible? Because you're working on two totally different ends of this system. Like, it's so it's so wonderful and so strange that you have these two incredible perspectives.
Right. I know. I help take them out and bring them in. Because I was also help as a birth coach for my friends. So it's like I could do both.
Because there must be very few people who have the knowledge and the actual experience that you've had, helping people exit this life and then also helping people make better of what they have already in this life.
Right. And also, like I said just a minute ago, I used to be a labor and delivery nurse. So like to have that full circle, I think my role used to be really important in our culture beforehand, before modern medicine. I think there was a medicine woman that in each community that did just that, right? That helped with all of it, and not just the physical aspects of it, but everything. I will always be a part of hospice or an advocate for dying with dignity. And I will always work with people. I especially love working with women, with living better and living healthier. So I'm not happier in either one. I'm happier when I'm doing the real work. I'm happiest when I'm really with my patient, not driving and doing the paperwork. I'm happiest when I'm really connecting with. I just had a 75-year-old woman come for a private breathwork and ice bath session, and she did phenomenal. And in the breath work, she said she felt like she felt God, and then she felt so powerful in the ice bath and felt so strong afterwards. Like, I love doing that work. I hate doing Instagram posts.
I hate Instagram, yeah.
I hate doing follow-up emails. I hate promoting myself. I hope you're
having fun here.
This is fun. This is talking. This isn't like me trying to make some Canva post.
No, it's good.
Right.
This is relaxing.
Right. This is a lot of fun. So I'm happiest doing the real work for both things.
Mm-hmm. You need a personal assistant who can do all the paperwork.
I know my daughter-in-law, my son's girlfriend, does help me a little bit, but she's got a full-time job. So I do need an assistant or a business manager.
Yeah, to let you kind of focus full time on what really needs to be done, which is connecting with people, right?
Right. That's my real work.
Do you think, I mean, where do you, I mean, obviously I think LA is such a unique place in the United States where a lot of this alternative medicine and this alternative thinking is really like taking shape, because I feel like people out here, like so much of their livelihood depends on how they look and feel. Versus other parts of the United States where maybe things are different.
Yeah.
But out here, like everyone's willing to try something new to help them feel better, look younger. And I feel like this industry here is primed to be, you know, to continue growing and to, you know, and for people to learn about Wim Hof and learn about what you're doing. And I just feel like it's such a great place to be, to kind of capture all these, you know, new ways of doing things, or figuring out old ways of doing things and bringing them back.
Right. Well, and, you know, people are so open to anything here, and especially when it comes to improving yourself. So, I mean, this is a great place. The downside on it, like a business model end, is that it's saturated with tons of people. And so, like in my workshops, I used to have a lot more people. They're a lot smaller now because people have more access to ice baths and don't necessarily see the full benefit of coming to a workshop where I break everything down. But my workshops are really fantastic because I do touch on the science behind it and explain what is happening in your bodies during the breath work and the ice. There's so much information. I could probably do a semester-long course, but I narrow it down to like what I'm trying to make it as easy as I can and why it pertains to you. And then I don't know if you've ever been in a group guided breathwork session.
Have never.
It's really powerful. It's really being in a group and being guided in breath work is like, you have to experience it. You'll have to come to the next one.
I've tried to sleep in a tent at 25,000 feet and almost suffocated because the air was so thin. Does that count?
No. So that's a little different experience than that. When you do the Wim Hof style of breath work, you can release these endocannabinoids and endo-opiates, and we think maybe even DMT. And so it can be this like euphoric, hallucinogenic, psychedelic experience. It's really fun.
Suffocating in a tent.
That doesn't sound fun. That doesn't sound like my jam.
Have you ever done that? No?
No, I've been in a tent that high.
Well, so it's very cold too, right?
Is it like, I'm envisioning like the ones that hang off the side of the cliff?
No, we're not that hardcore. We'll leave those for like Jimmy Chin and Alex Honnold and those guys.
Absolutely not. That's a no for me.
But what we used to do is, so what we still do actually is we just climb up the mountain, and but we're not like climbing up a rock face. We're kind of hiking up. And what you do, you just set a tent. But as you get higher and higher, it just gets harder to breathe.
Yeah.
So and what that does is it means like you just don't sleep as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, it's freezing cold. It can be like minus 40 degrees Celsius, which is also minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And then you're laying there, and what happens is your mind thinks like, oh, yeah, I'm just breathing like normal, but then there's not as much oxygen in the air. So at 16,000 feet, there's half as much oxygen in the air as at sea level. So when you get kind of higher up, your body's working the same amount on half the gas, basically. And then at night, this is where it really hits you. So you're laying in your sleeping bag on a sleeping pad on the ice, freezing cold. And then you start to fade away, and then you wake up like there's enough, like almost like you're underwater, and it just repeats and repeats and repeats all night, and you really just you just sleep in these like 30-minute like.
So do you get like do you have effects with it, like what we do with breath work, like because of hypoxia? Like do you see colors? Do you get tingly feelings?
Incredibly fucked up dreams.
Right, crazy.
Crazy fucking dreams. Yeah. Altitude is the best for like mind altering dreams.
Like crossing dimensions, like totally different experiences.
I think that's the thing that no one talks about. Like you see,
I've heard about this.
You see all these like famous mountain climbers who, you know, have climbed all the big mountains all around the world, and no one's just talking about how fucked up the dreams are. So I thought that's cool.
That's your like next book of just collecting mountain climbers' dreams.
I think it'd be interesting. But yeah, I mean, obviously, there's definitely things going on in the brain when you don't have as much oxygen, and then of course that translates into dreams and stuff. But it's definitely something to experience if you haven't gone down that road. But that breathwork, what the point was is that learning how to do breath work might actually make those experiences more tolerable.
Yeah. So, Wim, some of the records that he has, so he's climbed Kilimanjaro and Everest in record time without altitude sickness. And he brought groups of people who did not do the usual training for altitude sickness. And the majority of them made it to the top in record time. Like they beat the Sherpas. Like the Sherpas were like, what's going on? And so Mount Śnieżka that I did with him in Poland wasn't necessarily very high. I forget the altitude of it. It was more that it was freezing cold that made it difficult. But we do a very specific breath with that to keep our bodies warm and to help with the altitude while we're climbing.
Yeah, that's the key, isn't it? Just keeping warm. Like what? It's incredible what you can do without much.
Yeah. And how much stronger we really are
than we think we are.
Right. And than we think we are, and our brains limit us. There's also, I have to say though, too, because now that I've been in this practice for a little while, and so I work with a lot of people that are like gung-ho, want to push themselves really hard.
Those people are dangerous.
Yeah. There's two types of people in this world, people that push themselves too hard and then people that don't give themselves enough credit. And like, you usually know who you are. So this practice is about like, okay, how do I get out of my comfort zone, but then stay safe, right? Like not going too far, because for some people it's easy to go balls to the wall. The work is tempering it back. Like, how do I still grow and push myself, but then also know when to stop?
I think it's even more than that. I think so this is how I basically had a whole entire career out of being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I'm not like a Wim Hof guru, but I've done a lot of really uncomfortable stuff. But I think the thing for me was always like, first of all, I love being out in the middle of nowhere. But the further you push yourself into discomfort and the more you acclimatize to being discomfort, to being uncomfortable, then when you come back to society, which sadly we all have to do at some stage, then you're ready to deal with all of the garbage that our society and our lifestyle and our way of life have put on us, right? Like the expectations, the negativity, the politics, the news, like all of this is just attacking us every single day. And I feel like going out and doing uncomfortable things, going out and doing breathing work, going out and doing cold plunge, it's like that armor that prepares you to get through the day.
That's what I was talking about, this nervous system preparation. So a couple years ago, I got lost in the forest by myself for a night. I was in Sedona by myself hiking. I did a lot of mistakes. I learned a lot. And I thought there was one road in and one road out, and there wasn't. And I took the wrong trail, and I was only wearing like shorts and a tank top because it was hot during the day. And it got really cold really fast. And it's one of those things that if I hadn't had this practice, I would have lost my shit. I would have curled up in a ball and cried. And I don't know, it got really cold. I probably would have had hypothermia. I probably would have like been stuck out there for days. But because I have this practice, I was able to like collect myself, recalibrate my nervous system, and make wiser decisions. Like, okay, what do I need to do to stay safe tonight? And what am I going to do to get out of here? Which I honestly think that it would have been a lot worse if I didn't have this practice, if I wasn't practicing finding comfort within discomfort.
Wow, so it's already saved your life.
Yeah. Right.
That's not bad.
Literal form.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a pretty good qualification for continuing up with the practice. Yeah. So, I mean, what does 2024 look like for you moving forward? Like, what are you doing where people can learn more about what you do? Where are you headed, like with your groups and your retreats and everything like that?
So the retreats that I was doing were women's retreats in France. I'm not doing it this year because of the Paris Olympics.
Oh, that's right. The Olympics are in Paris this summer. Paris
is going to be at max capacity. So I'm pausing that. So I do, but I do private retreats. So if groups of people, like friends, want to do some sort of a retreat together, I do that. I do corporate events.
Where you get them lost in Sonoma? Or can get lost in Sonoma as a group?
Actually, I could now take them and do that. I could probably make that a cool workshop. Yeah. I have public workshops monthly here in Los Angeles. And then I do private stuff all the time. I fly out wherever people want to take me. My website is ChristinaCasey.com.
I'll make sure I add that.
Yeah, and then on Instagram I'm Breath, Body, and Soul. So if people want to reach out, I absolutely adore it and love it. Even if people want to get a small group of friends together, it's a really fun thing to do as a group.
Better than going drinking, right?
Right, exactly. And even if you've already done an ice bath before, learning some new tips and tools and the science behind it and how we do it and why we do it is really beneficial and helpful.
It's interesting. So, I mean, I don't want to make this commercial, and there's definitely no sponsors, but like, what kind of ice bath do you have?
So I just have a old school chest freezer that I got on sale from like Best Buy. There are these fancy ice baths.
Oh, they're all like thousands of dollars.
Like $20,000.
And we're going to get them all on advertisements in our social media tomorrow because we've been talking about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If everyone wants to give me one, I have an old school chest freezer that I lined with silicone that I plug and unplug. It's like so analog and easy, and I've had it for years, and it works great for me.
Yeah, I love all these people who have they just have like a trough like that animals would eat out of, and they just fill it up with water at night, and then the next morning it's like almost frozen.
Well, so it's not cold enough here to do that most of the year.
It's still cold in the morning though.
Yeah, but it's not quite icy. So for my workshop,
California cold.
Yeah, Los Angeles cold. I mean, the ocean is pretty cold. I have big plastic troughs that I use for my workshop that I bring in like hundreds or even thousands, sometimes pounds of ice. But for my day-to-day one, I just have the chest freezer, old school chest freezer.
Not bad.
It works. It's not as pretty, but it works.
I think people are going way overboard. Like I think that this is also too, like, I feel like you probably got into this way before it became like a fad.
Yeah.
But ice baths now, like all these celebrities are doing them on their social media. It's out of control.
Right. But it's so great. Like, I'm so happy that people are checking this out. And I really love seeing all the women doing it too, that like the pushing themselves and doing something so outside their comfort zone makes me so happy.
I mean, where do you think we are in the United States? I mean, this might be a overarching question that we don't have an answer to, but like, where do you think we can be in the United States about teaching people like how to manage their immune system in a better way?
Well, right.
Like, I think like you should be speaking at high schools and teaching like people who are 14 years old,
right,
that if you do this, and this, you're going to feel way better when you're 40 than if you don't, or way better than when you're 50.
And it's so big. I mean, we can go down rabbit holes of like, our diets should be from regenerative farms. We shouldn't have all this processed junk. We shouldn't, like, as you know, traveling abroad, the amount of additional chemicals, not just the shitty sugar and stuff that American products have. So like Oreos in the United States are different than Oreos in other countries. Like, that's a huge other thing.
Just take bread.
Like
bread in France and Switzerland and Europe is like wonderful and actually healthy for you, but here they just load it up with so much.
I'm allergic to gluten here. I eat a shit ton of bread. I just spent 2 months in France. Every day croissant baguette. Like, I just walked around with a baguette because I could. Yeah. It's unbelievable. And then also stress management and screen time. Screens and constant input and information activates our sympathetic nervous system and doesn't allow our body to heal. Like, society has evolved faster than our biology.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
So we need to let our body sit, and like that affects our immune system. Stress management, real connections with real people, human touch. Like, I think we need to do a better job across the board. I do think in places like Los Angeles that we're doing better with kids. Like, the way my friends are parenting their younger kids is even better than what I did with my kids, because we just know more information, have better tools of, teaching kids how to self-regulate and teaching kids healthier options.
Yeah, it's interesting because like I've made a career kind of being in the middle of nowhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's incredible how I've recognized how healthy that is. Like to be off grid, to be no digital distraction, no phone, no cell signal, to be sleeping with the natural rhythm of the earth, going to bed at 6:30 when the sun goes down, waking up at 5 when the sun comes up, eating light, exercising every day because we're usually hiking or trekking or climbing, and it got to the point where this was like incredibly addictive. And then when I would come back into like...
That just must have like shocked your whole entire nervous system.
Well, yeah, because there's two things you become addicted to, right? Mm-hmm. It's the healthy living when you're living in a tent, and that people are like, how can you live healthy in a tent? No, it's so much better for you, right? Like, and then the addiction of also doing new things and traveling and doing an adventure, which is also really addictive. But then coming back to, societal life and living in the city, dealing with traffic. That friend comment was great. But and dealing with all the pressures of that, and the more time I would spend out there, the more I would realize like how our great ancestors, like hunters and gatherers, how they lived off the land, and how there's still some subconscious connection.
Biologically, our bodies crave it. I think also like for women too, this is another road of not honoring and understanding our menstrual cycles. Like our society doesn't allow for women to rest.
No, not at all.
Right. And like that's what we're supposed to do. Like we're supposed to have a day or a couple days of rest. So like I don't, when I'm actively menstruating, I don't do ice baths or exercise. I try to like limit it because that's like, my boyfriend called me. He's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "I'm supposed to be like laying under a tree bleeding into moss, but instead I'm in traffic. Like what? Like I don't know what to tell you. Like instead I'm stressed out and have to work."
Yeah. Well, that's capitalism for you.
Exactly. Not letting me bleed into moss.
But this society specifically, it's quite intense with work and life balance, right? And just how messed up that is.
Right. I feel like, I don't know, at least in the healthcare system, there's been a shift since COVID where we were so overworked and so overstressed that a lot of people in healthcare are like, I'm not doing this anymore. Like I'm going to take my PTO, my time off. I'm not doing the extra overtime. Like I think we all are like, okay, we got burnt out. Now let's like shift back and have a little bit more work-life balance.
Yeah. I was chatting the other day with a doctor a week ago maybe, or 2 weeks ago, and she has a full medical training as a doctor, but she's also gravitated towards alternative medicines, and she says that she was telling me like the huge increase of people wanting to learn more about holistic medicine and more like of a 360-degree healthy lifestyle since COVID has been huge, because people saw like unhealthy people die faster, unhealthy people get COVID faster, heavier people and people who haven't managed their weight, or people who haven't kept their immune system in good shape, and it's just more susceptible. And then everyone was just like, well, I don't want to have to worry about taking a vaccine, and I don't want to have to worry about which company makes the vaccine and what all the side effects are. Like maybe I can just take better care of myself.
Right.
And I think like every conversation at least has to start there.
Right. Like exactly.
Yeah.
Like medication should not be our first step, right? Like it may be needed, but that shouldn't be step one.
Right.
Well, and even like so like the big corporate events, like I'm going into like, like executives, right? Like people that are like hedge fund managers, where like they're so stressed and so about like performance, but now all of a sudden their supervisors are like, hey, let's do some breath work.
Yeah.
Like even the corporations are realizing that if their employees are healthier, like it's better for everyone.
Yeah. I have a lawyer here in LA. He helps me with some of my stuff, just contracts and whatever. And I was at his office a couple months ago, and he has like a little pillow in the ground, and he like meditates. And he does that like once in the morning for like 10 minutes and 20 minutes or whatever. And then he does it once in the afternoon. He said totally changes his day.
Right. And so again, one of Wim's teachings is when you, not just Wim, this is like a holistic sort of idea, is that when you heal yourself, you heal the world. And that if every person who can, because right, there are so many people that don't have the availability, that they don't have the security or the safety to have this time to really work on themselves. For all of us that do have the benefit of that, of safety and security and food and water.
Yeah, we don't live in a war zone.
Yeah, exactly. So like it's our own responsibility to heal ourselves. And then once you do that, once you heal yourself, that there's a ripple effect for those around you. Like they see like, oh, everyone is like, she's so much more calm. He's so much more calm and happy. What are they doing? I should try it.
That's the keeping up with the Joneses that we should all be doing, right? Not like, oh, they just bought a Ferrari and I only have a Porsche.
Right.
Yeah. Or something ridiculous.
Like, so great. Oh my God, he's so zen.
I want to be zen too.
Yeah.
No, I think there's something to that. Like, I think we gravitate towards people who quote unquote like have it put together, but then it's like, well, how did they how they do that and what steps are and then, but I also feel like we're lazy. Like no one wants to make the effort.
Right. Oh yeah. Meditation, breath work, those are the easiest hard things to do.
Easiest hard things to do.
Right. Like I don't want to do it. There's an obstinate teenager that lives inside my head that's like, no, that's lame. I don't want to do that. Go get another cup of coffee instead of doing breath work. That's why I follow Wim's YouTube video sometimes. Just because, and I have a friend, Bria, who has a great YouTube video with guided breath work, because sometimes my brain doesn't want to sit to do it. So I just like, okay, I'm going to sit here for 15 minutes and I'm just going to do this.
Yeah. And transformational.
Yeah. It changes your life.
I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of things that we could do for 15 minutes a day that would greatly benefit not only ourselves, but society as well.
Right. Wow. Maybe that's our next thing, right? Like the 15-minute change.
Yeah.
What can you do for 15 minutes today?
Yeah, because who is that guy that's super popular who did like the 4-hour work week or the 4-hour work day?
Yeah, I know. Mark, he's done a bunch of interesting things.
Yeah, he's done all these like...
Rob is his last name, I think?
I'm going to have to put it in the... Someone watching this will figure it out. No, the super famous guy, like the 4-hour work week or the 4-hour work day, like how he just gets all this shit done.
That I can almost see his name right now.
He has a super big podcast as well.
Yeah.
He does speaking events all around the United States.
I've listened to him and Jack Cornfield. They had a really great podcast together, and Rob Wolf.
Is it?
No?
I don't know.
All right.
We'll come back to that.
Right.
It's going to hit one of us like the moment we turn off the cameras. And, I remember that guy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, I mean, is this okay, so here's what I've learned from you, right?
Okay.
So you know, third generation Angelino.
Yep, Angel, that's important.
And then you went into nursing and then went into hospice care. And then now you're trying to help people live a better life at this moment. And you're really, really big on like dealing with people and dealing with patient level and stuff like. Is this your last chapter? Like, is the Wim Hof Method and getting people breathing and ice bathing and living healthier? Is this like, because I feel like you've got like more chapters in you.
Yeah, no, I'm only 45. I still have, another 40, 50 years of being open to like seeing what else is out there.
But I mean, I guess what I really meant is like, are you going to stay with this focus of helping people live healthier, better lives now? Or are you going to go even to like working with children? Because I'm just curious, like where your focus.
I think I'll always have, I'll always be part of hospice and wellness too. I think I may be more of an advocate for medical aid in dying when it comes to hospice. I think that that's something that's really, I want people to know that they have that option. Because it really is a powerful experience. And it is, in my 20 years of hospice, I've helped over 1,000 people. Who knows how many people pass away. And the experiences I've had with the medical aid in dying have been so powerful and beautiful. So I probably will become more of an active advocate for that and lobbying for that. And I really love working with women. I really love working with mothers. And so I think where this wellness goes into, I know what it's like to be a mom where you have given everything that you have and you feel so depleted and you feel like it's not enough. And the strain and the stress and how that just turns so many women, like shuts them down and makes them cold. And then their partners are like, you're so cold, you're such a bitch. In the meantime, like she is struggling. I really love working with women and helping them regain back their power, and teenage girls. So I don't know. It will probably go in those two directions to focus those two.
I think super helpful, yeah. Because, men have no idea what the hell's going on. Like, we just stand there and we don't have any idea what's going on.
Well, I can tell you that almost every mother has probably cried herself to sleep thinking that she's not doing a good enough job.
And no man has ever cried himself to sleep.
I wouldn't say no man, but I would say that it would be few fathers that have cried, like where I don't know if I've ever met a mother that hasn't cried themselves to sleep thinking they weren't doing a good job.
That's terrifying.
It is.
Yeah. Because most men probably just have a beer and be like, I'm fucking awesome.
Well, even fathers that are really active in it, I don't know if they just, I mean, there are some fathers that do obviously give that much. I just think that women the mother just take on so much.
I think that is it. It's not like a lack of confidence or an insecurity. It's just that they just take on so much more of that like empathy of making sure that everything is perfect all the time. And that's the stress that that can, that's devastating.
Right. And I know how that feels firsthand. And then I know how it feels on the flip side. Having adult children is fucking fabulous. Like it has by far been my favorite part of parenting. Like they
could get into so much more trouble though. I feel like if I had kids, like that would be the part that I would be most nervous about, because I know all the crazy shit I got up to in my 20s.
Right. Well, I want them to enjoy life. I want them to have adventures. I want them to make mistakes. And I've also taught them discernment, and I've also taught them that they always have a place to come home to. So, and they have really good friends, and so I know all three of them, and they've also brought some really great partners. Like they've fallen in love with some really wonderful people, and so they're good. They're going to make mistakes and they're going to get hurt, and that terrifies me. But
I think when I was like in my 20s, I really felt like I couldn't tell my parents necessarily everything that was going on in my head, because I felt like my world had changed so much from their world. Do you feel like your kids can tell you like what's going on, even though because I feel like maybe in the last 20 years our society and world has advanced even further than when I happened to be in my 20s.
Right. Well, how old are you? Do you mind if I ask?
I'm 40. I turned 46 this year.
Right. So we were raised differently. Like, remember there was a commercial that said, it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are?
I used to go out all the time. Yeah.
Literally a commercial reminding parents like, hey, you should check on your kids. And, right. So our parents didn't ask us what we were thinking or feeling.
No, not at all.
So,
are you breathing? Did you eat dinner? Good.
Are you in trouble? Like, did the police get you?
Yeah.
That was my one rule, was like, don't let your dad find out. Like
there was no conversation at all about like mental health or like feeling confident or insecurity or any of this.
Right. Yeah. And, with my kids, I just think from the very beginning, there was also, I was so young and trying to survive. It was kind of like, hey, well, I was married. I had a husband. It wasn't like I was a single mom, but as a family, we were like, we are all in this together.
That's nice though.
Let's make this work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was always kind of out on my own, but it was a strange dynamic, that's for sure. And I know now, like, again, like we look at the world we have, and it's more confusing than it makes sense, right? And I think like being in your 20s now and trying to make sense of the world is much harder than it was. The world's much bigger now.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, when I was 22, I moved to China by myself, and I didn't speak Chinese, so I was like, I'm gonna go figure this out. But I'm the only person I ever have met that really did that. But nowadays, you get a lot of young people who are have the means to travel or have the means to
or want to. Like, I think maybe the positive one of the positive things about the internet is connecting people and like opening the world up to people. And I remember in the 90s feeling like I wanted to be more of an activist. I wanted to know more what was going on politically, but I didn't understand how. I felt like I couldn't find anyone that wanted to do it with me.
Yeah.
Where like
there was no Facebook group for it.
Right. Like there was no like TikTok that was like, here's the protest, show up. Right. Like, but I wanted that. I wanted to feel like I had a voice, and I felt really helpless, where I think at least this generation knows that they have community, but then they're also so disconnected.
And do they realize they're being so heavily manipulated? What kind of I need to have some like young people. I need to have some people in their 20s on here and just be like, do you know how fucked up the world is?
My two sons are heavily into philosophy. They love it since they were kids. And like I, as a teenager, would never read Camus or like could care less about that. But like they soak it in. I think they see that the world is so messed up that they are like looking for some answers.
I definitely gravitated towards international politics and political philosophy. And it's helped me kind of understand the messiness of it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you just watch CNN or Fox News every night, you're just going to end up in tears.
That's such a show. Yeah.
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 Well, not great. But you're continuing at the Wim Hof sessions, and you've got your websites, and you're on all the socials, and you're just, and it's working for you.
Yeah, it is. It is. I would love to reach even more people, and if anyone has any questions, if you ever have it, you'll have to come to a workshop, even though you've done an ice bath. Try to.
I didn't even do the ice bath in the right way. I didn't finish cold. I finished hot.
Right.
Yeah.
Come check it out, because it really is an amazing experience.
Okay. Yeah,
All
I'll
right.
have to do that. Well, look, thank you so much for swinging
It
by.
was so much fun. Thank you.
Yeah, I wasn't too formal or anything.
No, it was way fun. Super easy.
And now we go to the wide one here just to prove to everyone we're in the same fucking room. No Zoom calls.
Okay.
Yeah. Very nice to meet you.
Nice
Yeah.
to meet you too.
And best of luck with everything you're up to.
Thanks.
And yeah.
Well, I'll see you in an ice bath soon.
in an ice bath. Done.
All right.
Fade to black.